map out Medicare over the next generation.
And Mr. Gowdy, we're going to have to leave it there. My apologies. The House of Representatives is coming in. We'll go to them now.
Thank you.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We come to the end of a week where we have given thanks for the heroism of our astronauts. They answered the call to service of their nation and of their race, to leave the comfort of home to expand the horizons of us all. We have honored as well the elders of both the Senate and this people's House, two men who have served together over a century in this most noble work of representing the people of the United States. Now we approach a week during which all Americans will gather to remember who we are, a nation generously blessed not only by you, our God, but by courageous ancestors, faithful allies, and the best good wishes of people everywhere who long for freedom, who would glory in the difficult work of participative government, and who do not enjoy the bounty we are privileged to possess. Bless the members of this assembly and us all, that we would be worthy of the call we have been given as Americans. Help us all to be truly thankful and appropriately generous in our response. May all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 one-minute requests on each side. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Turn one, yeah, that's right. Mr. Speaker, this week marked the passage of an important milestone in American history. But don't just break out the confetti and the fireworks so quickly. According to the Treasury Department, our national debt just passed $15 trillion for the first time in history. Mr. Speaker, here's what $15 trillion looks like. Seems like a lot of money to me. That totals over $48,000 for every man, woman, and child across the fruited plain. Now, how did we get here? Through unchecked, excessive spending by the federal government. This addiction to spending somebody else's money has got to stop. We must be bold and cut unnecessary spending. Tough times call for tough actions, and we must even do more. Congress must pass the Balanced Budget Amendment. Force the government to balance its books just like Americans are supposed to do. We keep digging ourselves into the dark abyss of debt. Maybe we should quit digging before we reach Greece or the bottomless pit of bankruptcy. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Yes, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, of all the extreme statements we've heard coming out of the Republican presidential debates in recent weeks, perhaps none is more alarming than the idea that we should, quote, cut foreign aid to zero, even for steadfast U.S. allies, even for critical global health and anti-terrorism efforts. We might dismiss this ridiculous assertion as a Hail Mary from a candidate desperate to revive his flagging chances, were it not for the fact that it drew heavy applause from the Republican voters in the audience and eager agreement from the rest of the Republican field, including the presumptive frontrunner. Is this the state of today's Republican Party, the party of internationalists such as Teddy Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, and Ronald Reagan? Cut foreign aid to zero? Foreign aid has always been an easy target for demagogues, especially during difficult economic times. But the reality is that it's one of the most cost-effective investments our nation makes. For about 1% of our annual budget, it strengthens key allies such as Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Afghanistan, and Egypt, promotes economic development, benefits American companies, creates jobs back home. Suggestions that we should start at zero and ask our allies to come to us hat in hand are simply preposterous.
What purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, since 1980, Social Security's been required to publicly put deceased American personal information into a so-called death master file, which was meant to help prevent payment and prevent fraud. Nearly anyone can get this information, including identity thieves. Identity theft affects not only swindled businesses and American taxpayers, but grieving families whose suffering is made worse when they learn that someone has been preying on the death of their loved ones. Criminals are exploiting this information in order to profit off deceased children by applying for tax refunds. That's just wrong. Every year, Social Security puts about 14,000 Americans in this death file who aren't even dead. Any of us could be put on that list by mistake, a mistake that can result in severe financial hardship and emotional headache. Americans deserve better, so today I'm introducing the Keeping IDs Safe Act to stop the sale of the death master file immediately. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I rise in support of, or I rise in great sadness to recognize fallen Dorville Police Detective Corporal Robert Shane Wilson, a citizen of great distinction in my district who gave his life on behalf of the people who live there. Responding to a home invasion on November the 14th, he was tragically involved in a head-on collision with a drunk driver, and he was off duty at the time, responding. An 8-year veteran, Officer Wilson was just 27 years old. He was a member of the SWAT team. He served his community courageously and honorably and was very well liked and respected by his colleagues and fellow officers. He was a loving husband, father, brother, and son from a family steeped in law enforcement. In his off hours, he loved to play drums and piano. He composed music and always had a smile on his face. All Georgians are affected by this tragedy, but our thoughts and prayers go out especially to his family, friends, and colleagues. Robert Shane Wilson was one of the best, and he'll be greatly missed. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
What purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the liberal Democrat extremists took control of the Congress in 2007, the unemployment rate was 4.6%. When Republicans took back control of the House in January 2011, the unemployment rate had jumped to 9%. Under liberal Democrat control, 6.9 million more Americans became unemployed. So now we have 13.9 million unemployed Americans who've been ignored by the liberals in Washington. Higher taxes, record spending, and bigger government have failed to create jobs or boost economic growth. Put simply, this economy is growing too slowly to replace the millions of jobs lost. GDP and growth in the first quarter of 2011 fell to 1.8%, and the second quarter was 1.3%. The failure of the President's runaway spending, deficits, and debt is being felt by every family struggling to put food on the table and pay their mortgage. Instead of expanding the size of government, Republicans in Washington are committed to a pro-growth economic agenda that will put America back to work. And I urge people to go to America's job creators, jobs.gop.gov, to see the plan Republicans have to create jobs. We've passed over 20 bills that have gone to the Senate, and no action is being taken on them. I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I come to the floor today to support and urge us to support Kenyan military that has gone into Somalia to set up a corridor of safety for the Somali people and to help push back and fight against al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is a terrorist organization in Somalia. And because of the general chaos in Somalia, Mr. Speaker, al-Shabaab has been able to do two very bad things. One is because of the instability they create, they have caused massive refugee problems into Kenya, which is why the Kenyan military had to go into Somalia to try to stop that bleed. But they also have created chaos in the Red Sea through piracy and have also sponsored terrorism in other African nations like Uganda. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, they are an attractive nuisance to every bad guy who wants to come and have a safe haven for terrorism, and they attract international terrorists to Somalia, which further destabilizes that nation. After 20 years of chaos, the Somali people deserve some stability, and the Kenyan troops that are there are helping to bring that. The United States and the international community need to help, need to step up, and need to help offer sustenance and support for those Kenyan troops, Mr. Speaker. Let me say that
Gentleman's time has expired.
Let me say that this is the time to step up and help the Kenyan community help our country and the rest of the world.
What purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. America's middle class, her determined, hard-working middle class, is challenging Congress. Will Congress respond to our middle class? We in the middle class are growing increasingly aware of the statistics, that the wealth concentrated in the top 1% has grown exponentially, 275%. Over the same time frame, America's middle class has seen its wealth flatlined, and if it's grown, something diminished like 15 to 20%. That is unsustainable. America's middle class knows it. They know that we need to invest in our middle class, empower the purchasing power, raise our children, invest in their education and higher education, invest in health care, invest in public safety, invest in job creation and job retention, invest in research that equals jobs. That is the commitment that they're asking for. They know it's within the grasp of Congress to fix it. They know increasingly the American dream is growing outside their grasp. We need to go to work, provide jobs, the dignity of work for our middle class. We need to solve the problems of America through the eyes of our middle class. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition? Without objection, gentlelady is recognized.
November is National Caregivers Month. All across America, there are thousands of Americans who need help. They need help to stand, to sit, to put on their shoes, to go to the restroom, and even some to take their last breath. While there are those who are sitting by the bedside of those people, we call them in-home health care workers, who oftentimes in this country barely make even a minimum wage themselves, and if they needed the very care that they were providing, they could probably not afford it. As this Congress decides and looks at the Joint Committee's decisions and proposals before us, let's not go against those working people, thousands of people who don't even have enough to take care of their own families. The decisions can be done better, but they certainly should not be on the backs of working people and those who care for our Americans. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 470 and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 93, House Resolution 470, resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 3094 to amend the National Labor Relations Act with respect to representation hearings and the timing of elections of labor organizations under that act. the first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. It shall be in order to consider as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule, the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Education and the Workforce now printed in the bill. The committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. All points of order against the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute are waived. No amendment to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, it shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. Any member may demand a separate vote in the House on any amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole to the bill or to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion, except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered. Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, House resolution provides for a structured rule providing for consideration of H.R. 3094, the Workforce Democracy and Fairness Act. And with that, I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank the gentlelady for the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to the rule on the underlying bill. Mr. Speaker, with this rule and underlying bill, Congress continues months of inaction on job growth, months of ignoring real solutions, choosing instead to use our economic struggles as an excuse to push partisan and ideological legislation. The American people deserve jobs now, rather than bills aimed only at stoking the rhetorical fires and antagonizing political opponents. It's time to stop the games and seek compromise for the betterment of our nation. A middle-class tax increase is looming. With the extension of the payroll tax, many middle-class families earning $70,000 to $80,000 a year will be forced to pay over $1,000 a year more in taxes. Apparently, the Republicans believe that the government knows how to spend their money better than American families. As a business and an entrepreneur, I'm proud to have created many jobs and many businesses. I meet with the businesses in my district on a regular basis. Not a single business has raised this issue as any kind of impediment to job growth, any kind of impediment to getting the economy going again. This is simply a non-related subject that pursues a long-time agenda to destroy the ability of workers to organize. This bill represents the Ohioization of America. Just as Republicans attempted in the state of Ohio, House Republicans are simply union busting. But what we saw happen in Ohio, where Ohioans across the ideological spectrum overwhelmingly said no to this kind of anti-worker agenda, and the American people rejected as well. This bill's singular goal is to shut down workplace elections. It would overturn the proposed National Labor Relations Board rule that would modernize the union election process and avoid delays. But instead of creating efficiency in government, the workplace election prevention actually mandates inefficiency. It makes inefficiency the norm rather than the exception. The bill puts in place 35-day delays in holding elections after filing petitions. The bill includes no limit on how long the elections can be delayed. In the case of workplace elections, delay is a critical issue. The intent of delaying an election is to give anti-union employers a chance to prevent workers from organizing. Despite Republicans' professed outrage over frivolous lawsuits and tort reform and many other areas, H.R. 3094 incentivizes a mountain of litigation for the sole purpose of stalling workplace elections. This creates a massive backlog of cases, including frivolous ones, all on the taxpayer's dime. Republicans don't seem to have a problem with trial lawyers as long as they're suing unions. This bill even allows managers to stuff the ballot boxes of employer elections. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure many of us in this body here are following our state redistricting processes to see how various districts across the country are gerrymandered. What this bill would allow employers to do is effectively gerrymander what the negotiating unit is at the company. If there's a group of employees that's interested in forming a union, it would give the employer the ability to say, no, that's actually not a valid group. It needs to include this other group or this other group, and decide on what the electoral body is. What is the electorate? Choosing their own electorate, as too many members of Congress attempt to do through the redistricting process, choosing their electorate to try to rig the election against the workers. This bill is just the latest assault on workers' rights and is, again, typical of this do-nothing Congress. The Republicans have been fixated on attacking the National Labor Relations Board, the board that is in place to strike a balance between labor and employers, by cutting the agency's funding, by holding up new appointments, and now by reversing a rule on notice posting to inform employees of their rights. Mr. Speaker, the people are wise to see what's going on here in Congress. Every week we're in session. We see a parade of special interest bills paraded on the House floor, while taxes for middle-class families risk going up because the Republicans believe that government knows how to spend their money better than the American people. The big energy companies have got numerous exemptions from the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. The rest of us got pollution, asthma, and other illness. Look, is it possible to create jobs by lowering standards? It is. If you want to remove workplace safety standards, you can create jobs, unsafe jobs. Do you want to reduce the minimum wage to $2 an hour? You can create jobs, $2 an hour jobs. Is that the America we want? Is that the America we want for our children and grandchildren? We can do better, and we must do better. Why are we here? When will Americans get the job bill that we desperately need to the floor of the House of Representatives? You got some ideas to create jobs? Let's get them out, put them in front of us, and discuss them. Let's start by preventing the payroll taxes from going up for middle-class Americans. It's obvious why this body has an approval rating that's actually lower than communism now, and even lower than President Nixon when he resigned. It's time for this Congress to get to work, to provide solutions, to help get this economy going. Or it's going to be time to get a new Congress. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, our colleagues across the aisle are constantly reminding the American people of what a great economy we had when President Clinton was president. Why do we have such a great economy? Because 6 of the 8 years that he was president, we had a Republican-controlled Congress. The first 2 years of his administration was a disaster in this country. And then we had 6 years of the Republicans in control. They balanced the budget. They reduced spending. And did we have a horrible economy? Did we have horrible workplace situations? No. They want to lead you to believe that with Republicans in control and passing Republican bills that we'll somehow or another destroy this country. That is not going to happen. Under Republican control, we have generally a booming economy, but not under Democrats. I now would like to yield 3 minutes to my distinguished colleague from South Carolina, Mr. Scott.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Dr. Fox. I'd like to submit to the record the following email from Mr. Lace Solomon, Acting Chief Counsel of the NLRB. Mr. Speaker, I would say that there's no question that the NLRB is not under attack. Employees' freedom is under attack. The workplace fairness concept is under attack, but certainly not the NLRB. There's no question that the NLRB was thought to be an impartial referee for our employers and our employees, but that has not been the case. They have been anything other than impartial, and their email trail will show that in just a few seconds. But despite the fact that today we have 2 million more unemployed Americans, the NLRB continues to choose sides in the disputes as opposed to being a referee. Their lack of judgment and common sense has been magnified, and it can be seen clearly in the email conversations within the Department of the NLRB. Mr. Solomon apparently thought the following was funny, despite his current efforts, which threatens more than 1,000 jobs in the great state of South Carolina and in my district in North Charleston. Emailing a colleague regarding criticism from a magazine article, this is what he said. I want you to hear this clearly. I'm going to say it slowly, because we need to understand and appreciate that the NLRB has lost their marbles, without any question. His quote, "The article gave me a new idea. You go to Geneva, and I get a job with Airbus," Mr. Solomon said. "We screwed up the U.S. economy, and now we can tackle Europe." Let me repeat that, because this is the chief counsel at the NLRB, stating very clearly his intentions and his lack of humor. The article gave me a new idea, saying to one of his colleagues, "You go to Geneva, I'll get a job with Airbus. We have screwed up the U.S. economy, and now we can tackle Europe." Only in an alternate universe is this funny, or does it make any sense whatsoever? It is no secret that the NLRB's reckless actions have a direct impact on my district, without any question. But it is also no secret many on both sides of the aisle have recognized the danger of those actions. Earlier this year, the House passed my bill, H.R. 2587, which removes the ability from the NLRB to destroy jobs because, simply put, they cannot be trusted to do anything other than undermine the fragile recovery here in America. Unfortunately, Senator Reid has done with my bill with what he has done with the other 22 job-creating measures. Nothing.
Yield the gentleman another minute.
Thank you.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Dr. Fox. In an effort to appease the President and his union supporters, the NLRB has gone off the tracks and begun proposing harmful rules left, right, up, down. It is ridiculous. One of these rules is why we're here today, an effort to allow for quickie union elections. This rule quite simply puts the rights of all employees at risk by allowing as little as 7 to 10 days for employees to decide whether they want to join a union or not. The NLRB is preventing many from having the time to do the necessary research and make a good decision on whether or not they join a union. Currently, the average time is 35 to 40 days, a reasonable amount of time. I will not yield. No, sir. This is a significant difference. Going from 35 to 40 days, down to 7 to 10 days is ridiculous. 30 seconds.
Another minute.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Fox. The new rule also makes it impossible for anyone to challenge the bargaining unit chosen by the union, dividing employees and raising employers' labor cost. We stand here today with an opportunity. We can either allow the NLRB to continue to create bad policy and bad rules, or we can put America and the job creators back on the right track. The question could not be simpler, and the choice has been made easy because of the inability of the NLRB to do what they were chosen to do, which was to be the impartial referee on issues between employers and employees, and I find that challenging. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from California, the ranking member of the Education and Workforce Committee, Mr. Miller.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. 75 years ago, this nation decided as a matter of right and a matter of law that the decision of whether or not workers wanted a union belonged to those workers. And this Congress passed the National Labor Relations Act to give workers this right and an election to decide. Ever since that time, companies have fought to take away the right of the workers because they believe that the companies control all of the rights in the workplace. They believe that the workers should simply take and do as they say, and that's the end of the discussion. And this has been a battle throughout the economic history of this country since the passage of the National Labor Relations Act. But the fact of the matter is that when unions decide, when workers decide they want an organization, they go out and they talk to their fellow workers, they form a union, and they have an election. But what we now see is the companies constantly trying to insert themselves into that worker-controlled process by trying to disrupt the elections of those workers and trying to keep them from exercising their rights under the law. And this is the goal of this very anti-worker, anti-family legislation. It would end the collective bargaining rights for working people in this country because it would so skewer the process that you would never get to that election that workers are guaranteed under the law. This is Wisconsin and Ohio all wrapped up into one. This goes across the nation. What they can't do in the states where they don't control the governorship or the legislature, where they've made the attempt right after the election to take away workers' rights at work, where they can't do that, they now seek to do in the halls of Congress. To so change the process and to discriminate against the rights of workers so that, in fact, the process ceases to exist. How do they do that? They do that by having endless delays. Why are endless delays important to employers? So that they can hire union-busting law firms to come in and intimidate and teach employers how to intimidate workers, because don't forget that the employer has a right from the moment they're served notice to have captive meetings in the workplace where they threaten the workers with the loss of jobs, where they threaten the workers with being fired, where they threaten the workers for sending work to China or elsewhere, where they threaten the workers that they won't get the promotion, where they change the workers' shift time from maybe day shift to graveyard shift and keep rotating around to show them that they're in control and the workers have no rights. And if you can do it for 7 days, you have a chance. If you can do it for 10 days, you have a better chance. If you can do it for as many as 2,000 days that these law firms have kept the process open, you can kill the drive for a union. You can intimidate the workers. How else do they do it? When workers decide among themselves that we want a unit within this company, within this factory, to represent us, this law now says, this bill now says that the employer can come in and rearrange the members of the unit that would have that election. They can stuff the ballot box. They can pick your candidates to stand for election. Doesn't sound very democratic to me, but that's what they get to do under this bill as it's proposed. The workers no longer get to decide as the law says they get to decide. The workers no longer get to decide as the Supreme Court says they get to decide. The employer gets to decide. The arrogance of these people to suggest that they should pick the leaders of the workers, that they should pick the organization of the workers who have a right to organize. So they get to delay the elections. They encourage and provide for and define the right to continue to file frivolous lawsuits so that this process never ends. You can bankrupt these workers if they try to run head-on-head with these big law firms that are specialized in this, that travel around the country to take away their rights at work. What does this mean? This means underpinning the basic organization in the American workplace today that speaks on behalf of the middle class. This is from the organizations that brought you the Great American Weekend. This is the organizations that brought you the 8-hour day. This is the organization that brought you overtime pay if you work longer than 8 hours. This is the organization that brought you sick leave. This is the organization that brought women their rights at work. This is the organization that makes safe workplaces. This is the organization that provided for the first time pensions and retirement benefits for workers. Any wonder why these corporations, why the Chamber of Commerce is so set against this? Because they don't want to do this anymore. They want to ship the jobs to China. They want no minimum wage. They want a sub-minimum wage. They want no rights at workers. How do the American families survive that? They've already offloaded all of the health care costs they possibly could. They've offloaded all of the pension costs they possibly could on the backs of these workers. Now they want to take away the rights to organize. We should not allow that to happen. Not in this country, not in this Congress. We should not allow that to happen to American workers and to their families. We should defeat this very anti-family piece of legislation.
Order.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I did yield an additional 30 seconds to the gentleman from
Support of
California.
regular order for 30 seconds. I'd like to remind the gentlewoman, when the vote came,
Gentleman's time has expired.
I yield an additional 30 seconds.
There wasn't a single Republican vote for that in the Clinton era. Not a single Republican vote. Once again, you balked when it came time to fix the economy.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now would like to yield a Southern gentleman who understands the rules from Tennessee, Dr. Rowe, for 4 minutes.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 4 minutes.
Dr. Fox, I thank you for yielding, Mr. Speaker. I urge my colleagues to support this rule and the underlying bill. Our country is in the middle of a jobs crisis, no question. Both sides understand that. The national unemployment rate's hovered around 9% for the longest time in my lifetime. And in Tennessee, it's even higher, 9.8%. Millions of American families are struggling as we speak. In the midst of all this uncertainty, the House, with bipartisan support, has passed 22 jobs bills. Right down this hallway here, this week, the U.S. Senate worked so hard they voted 2 times on 2 federal judges. That's all the work that took place with 22, many of them bipartisan bills passed, Mr. Speaker. I think right now we've seen in this country, to hold up jobs, a delay of the Keystone Pipeline, which would essentially, over time, provide us as much oil from Canada as we're getting from OPEC right now. 1.3 million barrels a day would essentially relieve us and help our national security and create thousands of jobs. So why are we here today? What happens currently? Mr. Speaker, I grew up in a union household. My father was a union worker for, at that time, the United Rubber Workers Union. He worked in a factory and he made shoe heels. And the union, we have a right in this country, employees have a right to organize and to vote in a union or not. So what's happening right now? Well, currently in 2010, 92% of the initial union elections were held under a voluntary election agreement. When they had an election, 92%, only 8% went to the NLRB election official, at which time then they had to sit down together. That's what happens to agree on the rules of the election. And as Mr. Scott pointed out, the NLRB is supposed to be a fair arbiter. Like you're playing a basketball game and you go to someone's home gym, you expect the referees there to carry out a fair game for both sides so that both sides have a chance to give their side of the story. So in June of this year, what's happened? And the NLRB issued a rule that would say that an employer has 7 days to find an attorney to present their side of the case. And remember, in this, just the description of this, there are over 400 pages of rules that you have to go to, or information that the lawyer has to go through. And they have 7 days to get that done, and an employee would have just 10 days to decide whether they want a union or not, and they have that right. Today, almost 70% of the elections held, the union wins. And what's the average time of an election? 31 days. So that means if you wanted to vote on the 1st of October of 2011, the average time by the end of that month, 70%, almost 3 out of 4, would be picked, yes, we want a union. So what happens? After this 10 days, the second thing that the union wants is the amount of information that's required that an employee give up. And what would that be? Well, that would be personal information, including your work schedule, your home address, phone numbers, etc. Right now, what we want, what this bill says, is that the employee gets to decide just their name and what other way they want to get contacted. I think that's fair. I think that's right. Let the employee decide. Mr. Speaker, also what my colleague from California spoke of is a bargaining unit. For over 2 decades, the NLRB has used a standard to define what a bargaining unit is. This is a new definition. We have done this for almost 30 years in this country, and we want this to change. I think right now, I believe, as I understand the law, it's against the law right now as an employer for over 3 decades to threaten a worker. You can't do that now. It's against the law. So this bill that we're defining allows 14 days. Is my time expired?
Yeah, I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. This bill would give you the employer 14 days on a pre-election hearing to find representation. It would allow the worker 35 days to get the information that they need to make an informed decision to vote in a secret ballot so that they can decide in an unintimidated, so the employer or the union can't intimidate this worker. It would allow the employee, the worker, to decide what information, not the union, would allow the employee the decision about what information I want to give up. This is a common sense bill. This just basically redefines what has been going on for over 3 decades. I respect the right of anyone to belong to a union if they want to. As I said, I lived in a union household, but I believe this will allow both sides a free and fair way to decide whether they want to, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Crowley.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado for yielding his time, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I played a little basketball in my day. You know, I grew up on a schoolyard, and we chose teams. We didn't need referees, quite frankly, because we chose teams fairly. You don't need referees here either if you have the opportunity to pick the other team. You're the A team, but you get to say as to who you're going to play. You don't need referees in that kind of a game because you know the outcome. You know what the outcome is going to be. And that's what this legislation is about, is trying to undo the fair playing field. Now, I've heard that the job losses in this country are because of President Obama and the health care bill. And I heard that the job loss in this country is because of Speaker Pelosi and Harry Reid and all the bad legislation. And I've heard it's because we have a Department of Education. And I've heard it's because we have a Department of Commerce. And I've heard it's because we have a Department of NLRB. Oh, oops, I'm sorry, I forgot. You got me. The NLRB. Well, Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this legislation. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have a common refrain that they want to make the federal government more efficient, work better for the American people, and move obstacles to create a mantra that I am very much in favor of. But this bill will do exactly the opposite. In fact, repealing the NLRB's proposed rule will actually make government less efficient, more burdensome, and introduce costly delays to a process that is already rife with abuse. So I think the American people deserve to know, why did the GOP prioritize this bill and bring it to the floor for debate? The answer is pretty clear. It's a thinly veiled and a very thinly veiled effort to make it all but impossible for American workers to organize in labor unions. That's it. It's an effort to place ideology over practicality, and it has nothing to do, it has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with job creation. Over 300 days, and I won't take the full, over 300 days here on the floor, and yet not a single jobs bill has been offered by my Republican colleagues to put Americans back to work, and instead, once again, they have put on the floor a bill to hurt the American worker, the American family. Have you no shame? Is there no end to this? Are there any other departments we can get rid of in these few remaining days of this session? Put Americans back to work. Stop beating up on the fair players on this playing field. Put Americans back to work.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my colleague from New York, as well as all our colleagues across the aisle, that Republicans have passed over 20 bills this session that would create jobs and bills that would bring down the cost of gasoline. Those are the two things that my constituents are most concerned about, and if our colleagues across the aisle are talking to their constituents, or more importantly, listening to their constituents, they would know that's what their constituents are concerned about also. However, those bills are tied up in the Democrat-controlled Senate. I now would like to yield 5 minutes to my distinguished colleague from South Carolina, who did such a wonderful job on C-SPAN this morning, Mr. Gowdy.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the gentlelady from North Carolina for her leadership on this issue and so many other issues on the Education and Workforce Committee. Mr. Speaker, when so many of our fellow citizens are hurting, when so many of our fellow citizens are looking for work, when so many of our fellow citizens are striving to meet their familial and societal obligations, and all they want is the most basic of all family values, which is a job. And as my friend Tim Scott, my friend and colleague from Charleston, so eloquently put it this morning, the NLRB thinks it's a joke, Mr. Speaker. A joke. They're making jokes about it. Airbus is not just another plane manufacturer. They're the direct competitor to Boeing. Virtually everyone is familiar with the most glaring example of NLRB overreach, which is the complaint they filed against Boeing, and not a single example of job loss has been cited. Not a single worker has lost a single benefit in the state of Washington. Nevertheless, the NLRB sued Boeing, and they seek to have Boeing mothball the facility in North Charleston and displace 1,000 workers and return the work to a union state. That is Exhibit A in NLRB's activist agenda, and I regret to say this as a former prosecutor who actually values impartiality and fairness, Mr. Speaker. They have become a sycophant of big labor. And while Boeing is Exhibit A, it is by no means, Mr. Speaker, the only evidence of an activist, politically motivated agenda. Currently, union elections, Mr. Speaker, take place on average within 31 days of the filing of an election petition. Additionally, unions are victorious more often than not. But unions want more. So they persuaded the NLRB to propose sweeping changes to the rules and regulations governing the election process, shifting the balance of power even further towards those employees seeking unionization. By promoting rush elections and ruling that elections can take place in as little as 10 days, Mr. Speaker, the NLRB severely limits the opportunity for workers to hear all sides of the issue and make an informed decision. Additionally, employers would only have 7 days to retain legal counsel and decipher the complex labyrinth of federal labor law before presenting their case before an NLRB hearing officer. Education and Workforce Committee Chairman John Klein smartly introduced H.R. 3094, the Workforce Democracy and Fairness Act, to level the playing field. This legislation requires no union election occur in less than 35 days, thus granting all parties the ability to present their arguments and ensuring workers have the ability to reach an informed decision. H.R. 3094 acknowledges that full and complete information is treasured when employees are contemplating how they will vote. Ironically, Mr. Speaker, some unions have already endorsed President Obama's re-election bid, which is well nigh a year off. Clearly, they believe they need the time, the 12 months, to inform their members. But somehow a week is enough for employers to inform their employees of all salient facts before an election. The hypocrisy and blind advocacy towards big labor has to stop, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the National Labor Relations Board is to enforce the National Labor Relations Act. And the purpose of the Labor Relations Act is to balance the rights of employers, employees, and the general public. The act is not calculated to drive up union membership because they happen to be a loyal constituency of the Democrat Party. Because the NLRB, through its filing of proposed rules and regulations, has lost all pretense of objectivity, Mr. Speaker, and labor issues, fair, even-handed pieces of legislation like Chairman Klein's Workforce Democracy and Fairness Act are necessary. And in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I encourage my colleagues to help us protect American jobs, to stand up for equal access to justice, to promote a level playing field. I encourage my colleagues to support the rule and support the underlying bill. And with that, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 3 minutes. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, when the sun rose over the country this morning, a lot of Americans got out of bed to go to a job that doesn't pay them enough to support their family. They're working part-time to pay full-time bills. A lot of other Americans who have good jobs, good full-time jobs, woke up this morning and worried if this was going to be the day that they got their pink slip and got their layoff notice. And far too many Americans, about at least 15 million of them, got up this morning and didn't have a job to go to. 90% of the people surveyed in a recent survey in this country said the American dream is either dead or on life support. Because, see, the deal in the country has always been if you work as hard as you can and do your fair share, then the country will give you the opportunity to move your family forward. People don't buy that anymore. They don't believe it anymore. And so what are we doing about it here this morning? We're having a debate about a bill that changes the rules for the way people decide whether or not to have a union in their workplace. Now, this is an important consideration. It's a worthy consideration. I think the bill's a very bad one, but it's a credible debate to have. But it's the wrong debate to have. Members of our caucus have gone out over the last month and spoken to thousands of small business people, the real job creators in this country, who create 2 out of every 3 jobs created in America. And here's what they've said. We're not hiring people largely because we don't have enough customers, and if we think we do have enough customers, we can't get loans from banks that we bailed out with our tax money. That's what we ought to be discussing here today. Now, the other side will say, no, these small business people aren't hiring because of their deathly fear of regulations. Well, here's what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says. When they interviewed employers who'd laid people off in 2010 and said, why did you lay people off? About 40% of those employers said, we laid people off because we don't have enough customers. 0.2% said they laid people off because of regulation. That's what the facts are. How do you get more customers for businesses? One idea would be to put construction workers back to work, building schools and libraries and roads and bridges, so they'd eat in the restaurants and buy in the stores. There's a bill pending before the House to do that, the President's jobs bill, but we're not voting on that today. We have something better to do. Another way would be to avoid a massive tax increase on the middle class of this country. I would ask for an additional minute. I thank the Speaker. I thank my friend. If we don't act by January 1st, there'll be a $1,500 tax increase on every middle-class family in this country. The President says we should postpone that tax increase so people have more money to spend. But we're not voting on that bill today. We have something more important to do. How about the idea of a tax cut for small businesses that hire people? That's in the President's jobs bill. But we're not voting on that today because we have something more important to do. How about saying to teachers who have been laid off from the classroom, firefighters and police officers not on the job because of cutbacks in local government. How about saving their jobs so they can serve their communities and spend more in the stores and the restaurants and on products in this country? That's in the President's jobs bill, but we're not voting on that because we have something more important to do. There's a reason why 90% of the people of this country think that Congress is not doing a good job. It's because the leadership of this Congress, the Republican leadership of this Congress, is voting on the wrong bill at the wrong time, and today's another sad chapter in that reality. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will reserve.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this rule and to the underlying bill, H.R. 3094, the so-called Workforce Democracy and Fairness Act. Since the start of the 112th Congress, there's been a certain faction guiding the Republican majority, undertaking what amounts to a full-scale attack on America's working families and America's working class, and against the bedrock principles that have helped create America's middle class. This latest effort is more of the same. The so-called Workforce Democracy and Fairness Act is another piece of legislation that weakens the rights and protections that workers have long and hard fought to obtain. Section 9B of the National Labor Relations Act gives employees the right to organize, quote, in an appropriate unit, giving them choice in how best to bargain with their employer. And that's all this is about. When an employee group organizes, all it requires is that they sit down across from their employees and bargain, talk to them about terms and conditions of employment and benefits. What this bill would do is establish a one-size-fits-all approach to organizing, forcing together employees who have very little in common, and making it much more difficult to organize. That's gerrymandering, basically, to protect employer interests, plain and simple. This bill doesn't stop at changing existing rules, however. This bill would overturn proposed rules that have not even been finalized by the National Labor Relations Board. The NLRB has proposed practical rules modernizing and streamlining the union election process. The proposed rules are genuine improvements over the existing procedures and are designed to encourage the use of technology and discourage unnecessary litigation and save taxpayer dollars. Look, I was an iron worker for 18 years, a union iron worker, very proud of that fact. I was a union president. I also was involved in very many union organizing drives, not only for my own union, but for the carpenters and stagehands, wardrobe workers. And the NLRA, the act is actually set up to reduce the likelihood of unrest, of workforce disputes. It's really to help business and workers and to reduce that economic conflict. This bill will have the opposite effect. This bill will actually increase the likelihood of labor disputes. And we have seen in this country a great disparity between the haves and the have-nots. This is going to make matters worse. Instead of putting people to work, this is going to cause strife and reduce the efficiency and productivity of America's workers. This is shameful. We should think about strengthening all these union workers. This is the middle class in America. You're destroying the middle class in America. You're increasing that disparity between the haves and the have-nots. We've got to do better than this. The American people deserve it. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will continue to reserve.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from Colorado.
Okay, I just would like to inquire if the gentlelady has any additional speakers.
We do not, and I'm prepared to close if the gentleman from Colorado is prepared.
Very well. I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the middle class of this country doesn't need a higher payroll tax, more dirty air, dirty water, fewer workers' rights. And they certainly don't need more partisan gridlock in this do-nothing Congress. And yet that is what is being offered here today. The American people and the American economy need jobs, need optimism. Our nation needs to know that we're working to ensure American competitiveness and access to hope and opportunity, to work to ensure that kids get the best education in the world, so we can drive the economic engine of today and tomorrow, invent new technologies, propel future generations of American ingenuity and leadership. This kind of political gridlock in this do-nothing Congress do not help America move forward. This bill's singular goal is to delay and ultimately prevent workers from voting in workplace elections. These rights have helped to create the American middle class in the last century. In recent decades, the erosion of these rights have lowered paychecks for families, led to jobs outsourcing overseas, and widened the income disparities in our society. Are environmental and workplace laws, which have been around for decades, the reason the economy is lagging? Of course not. Yet these are the types of so-called solutions that are being put forward in bill after bill after bill. Let's talk about preventing a looming increase on taxes in the middle class. I encourage the supercommittee and, if it need be, standalone legislation to ensure that we can keep payroll taxes at their current level. It's time for Congress to take up the President's Jobs Act, which includes extending the middle-class tax cut. The American Jobs Act, which the Republicans still refuse to consider, includes job-creating proposals, including rebuilding our schools, tax breaks for small businesses to create jobs, and modernizing our air traffic control system. It's time for this Congress to stand up for the American people, to offer solutions, to get serious about getting our economy back on track instead of just scoring political points that appeal to the base. I urge a no vote on this rule and the underlying bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentlelady from North Carolina.